they had this thing covered, but they had it made. We started looking into the people behind it, and they involved the major political contributors to the mayor. The person that you have most heard about is the Grand Prix promoter, J.P. Grant. But Grant's really more important in City Hall, not for the Grand Prix, but that he is the biggest bundler of campaign contributions to Mayor Rawlins-Blake during her 2011 campaign.
And this is a black man. Not that it matters. Correct?
Yes, and the firm that put in this $185 million bid, there are only two of them. The city actually knocked out three companies that were national water meter companies, and then added in this cell tower repair company called Dynas out of Columbia, Maryland, that has no experience in actually installing cell phones or water meters. Excuse me, I'm getting smart meters. And so there was a lot of going on here, and it's been going back and forth in the city bureaucracy. People have been very worried about it, and I'm happy to report, at least tentatively, that yesterday the city's purchasing office put forward the lower bid by Itron, which is a nationwide leader in water meters.
So, just a quick aside, when journalism affects policy, that's when you win a Pulitzer Prize, right?
Well, you could, yes. Well, at least if it's the establishment papers, yeah.
Well,
we're a website, but we're a news website.
Well, we're giving you the Community People's Award. How you like that?
That's great.
Because if it weren't for you, you just saved us $100 million thus far.
Perhaps, certainly.
Now imagine somebody don't like you because of that.
Yeah, there's a lot of powerful people behind the Dynas bid.
You feel like your phone is tapped?
No, but I'm not sure about my water service.
Sorry, we got Jesus Christ up in here.
In fact, it went off around 2 weeks ago when I was writing all this for 16 hours.
You just lost power.
Lost water, and I went up the street to see what the problem was. I talked to the DPW, including their spokesman, and first they said it didn't happen, and then, of course, it did happen. And I went up the street when it was all over and saw the pipe that they had pulled out of the ground, and we had some pictures of it. This thing was the most ratty-looking pipe that was filled with what's called tuberculars, or tuberculation, and these are these awful-looking purple-red growths that grow. Tuberculators.
Don't sound good. Sounds too much like tuberculosis.
It's iron that rusts inside the pipes, and what is really underneath all of our pipes. And this gets back to the whole water meter situation. The mayor is hell-bent on getting so-called smart meters that would be remote control meters, an extremely complicated program, allegedly to correct the problem of perhaps 2,000 inaccurate water meters. And the real problem is that the city's pipes are so old and are filled with tuberculars. And instead, even with this lower contract, I've been writing a number of stories that in Houston, in New York, in Cleveland, where they have installed so-called smart meters, they've turned out to be really dumb, and they did two things. They continue to have inaccurate readings, in part because the smart meters don't interface properly with the billing system, and so there's errors that are built into the system. Secondly, it's very, very hard now to get recourse. In New York City, they installed up 1 million smart meters. They were making all sorts of errors. So what was the city's solution? Either you pay the bill or you pay the city $180 to have an actual human read it.
And that's called, this is how we make you shut up.
Exactly. So it's the overall program, I think, is, and I've written a number of stories based on other cities' experience, is very costly. And I've asked the mayor at press conferences about this, and her response was, I really don't know about what's going on.
Is that true? I mean, if I'm driving a car and something bad should happen, or, you know, if I'm running a company like BlackBerry, you got to love BlackBerry. They got rid of the CEO. It's the head. It's at the top.
Well, either, you know, since this is one of the biggest projects now before the city, you would hope that the person who is responsible would have done some research on this. And I'd like to explain to your audience what these smart water meters actually entail, because they're pretty fascinating. Right now you have water meters, old water meters. They open the lid, the meter reader, and takes the reading. A lot of them have handheld computers and put in the reading, and it goes downtown. What the smart meters would do is they have a more advanced meter that does that they advertise to the city does one thing. It will raise your water bills. They brag about that they will have better low flow detection, and they estimate that they'll increase the water bills of Baltimore City residents by 10%.
I'm sure the arena players are looking forward to that. You know, they almost lost the arena players over a water bill.
Right.
Oldest black continual theater house, I mean, historic.
Right.
Over a water bill.
Right. So what happens is these new meters are installed, and they're installed with little radio transponders that will go to cell towers or other collectors, much like your cell phone, and eventually get to the city. These things are advertised as being able to, and the city requires that each new water meter give hourly readings 24 hours a day. There's 404,000 water meters, 24 hours a day. That means the city will be collecting 9.6 million pieces of data every day.
What are they going to do with all that data?
They don't seem to know.
Oh, they're going to put it into the blue light cameras. Remember those?
Exactly.
We got 9 of them just before the election. They were like, see, look what we did for your neighborhood. Let me tell you, them blue light cameras cause a syndrome, blue lightitis. That's all you see. You wake up in the daylight, you got blinking blue lights in your head.
Well, it's like tuberculation. Yeah, you got problems. So you're drinking stuff that's filling you up with iron and who knows what else.
Don't forget the lead.
And some lead. You have speed cameras that have been inoperative for
thank God,
for 6 months. But you know, they just bought all of these speed cameras and they're sitting there in the warehouse.
And what's the other thing they tried to buy? You know, when she first got down there, it was a big old bill. You know, VoIP, the phone.
Oh,
you forgot about that.
Right, the telephones that would have all of this fancy gimmickry.
They were like $1 billion, and they.
Well, and the thing is that again, none of the so-called smart telephones have been installed. She and Controller Pratt have been fighting over that. But what would really help Baltimore is, and I think we all know this, is incremental improvements. For example, if you have water meter problems, get management, good management. Instead of these grandiose plans that we have documented in not just this case, but in the Grand Prix and others, basically are contracts awarded to insiders and political contributors.
Payola. That's what they call it, payola.
Well, or pay to play. And what I like about this whole water meter process is you know, you always have unintended consequences or other stuff. Because they have these radio transmitters in the water meter container, the old cast iron water meters that you see on your sidewalk in front of your house, all 400,000 of them will have to be replaced as part of this program with new plastic composite water meter lids so that the cell phone and the radio transmissions can go through.
Sounds like some chicanery. We're talking with SmartWater of the Baltimore Brew.
But I want you to know, Donnie, and your readers, it's very important to know that all the new composite water meters will be ADA approved. So if there is a disability person who on a wet day sees a water meter in the future, they can run right over it and not run into problems. So we're paying for that. ADA approved smart water meters.
That's it?
That's it. Well, for $85 million or $83, which is better than $185. Now that's based on what is before the Board of Estimates. You never know until the actual gavel gets thrown down. The Dynas folks have already put in a protest and will be fighting it tomorrow, and are certainly screaming and yelling right now in City Hall.
And this comes on the heels of right after HarborPoint.
Right.
Was that a fiasco? I mean, there's some people who say HarborPoint, oh, it's the greatest thing since sliced bread. But I come to find out that they got a check to say that.
Well, they
got paid.
We got, a lot of coverage. Again, it's a question that if the developers wanted to build HarborPoint, great. Let them develop it. They have the land. But they don't want to develop it. They want $107 million in essentially our money. It's very trickily done. It's actually deferred property taxes, but it's loss of revenue. We also reported that in addition to that, the city plans to divert $95 million in federal highway money that would be going to highway projects around the city, like the bridges, Edmonton Avenue, and others that they say are about to fall down. And $95 million over the next 5 years will be diverted also to HarborPoint.
Okay, but you just you're telling me that they couldn't find $1 million for the recreation center. I don't even care about it. Steal all you want. But recreation centers, and for a boneheaded councilman, I'm sorry, my bad, Omega, to propose that our kids got to pay $10 to go to a recreation center. I mean, steal all you want, but take care of the kids. I know that's not responsible, but I mean, all of the dirt you're doing, you can't look out for the kids. I mean, it's like the drug dealers. If you go to the drug dealer and say, hey, we try to get some bags or something for the homeless during Thanksgiving, the drug dealers will give you some money. Politicians are more cutthroat than drug dealers.
Well, they have their own priorities, and you can see by this is that it's...
But they say they want to help the people and serve the people. You know all of them kumbaya stories they sing when they want your vote?
Right. Well,
the black ones, too. I'm especially talking about the black ones.
The big problem now with HarborPoint, now that the city has offered all this money, offered all this federal highway money, which, again, is unclear, all of this money coming in, is there's real questions. We wrote a story about it yesterday, whether the project will actually get built, because they neglected or thought they could finesse the one big problem of why that 27 acres hasn't been developed for the last 30 years.
Contaminated?
It is contaminated with one of the most dangerous forms of any chemical, which is known as hexavalent chromium.
Hexavalent chromium. That sounds dangerous.
It is. It's the toxic form of chromium. It's extremely dangerous.
Chromium is in phones also? Used for telephones?
It's used for paints. It's used for, the chrome on cars. It gives that shiny thing.
Okay.
There was a Baltimorean named Tyler who invented this process back in the 1850s.
Thanks, Tyler.
And actually his son built Silburn House. That's sort of the house of chromium, that's the house that Chromium built. But chromium is very lethal stuff. There was the old Allied chemical plant there that was the biggest chromium plant in the world. It was so bad it was finally closed down in 1985. Some of you would remember the problems down there. Instead of taking the chromium contaminated soil out, which would have been the permanent solution, they decided to bury it. And they have around a 6-foot thick membrane cap over that, which is why when you look at HarborPoint, it almost looks like a parking lot. And there's also a wall to keep it from, we are told, from leaking into the harbor.
And you don't believe that. I don't believe that. It doesn't even sound right.
Well, the EPA, which is, not the city council and doesn't take its orders from Ryan Potter or other lobbyists, have, raised some serious questions about how the developer will be able to pierce the cap. This is what's going to go on. To build the Exelon Tower,
you got to dig in that dirt.
Yeah, and what people don't realize, the plan is to put 1,100 pilings as well as other excavations so that the cap will soon start looking like Swiss cheese. And how are you going to keep rainwater and the dust coming out of here from getting all through the atmosphere and draining out into the harbor? And that's the question that might cause serious problems after, and the city shouldn't have had all of this. They had 30 years to figure this out. Instead, they pushed ahead to get this money, committed the city. All of this time and treasure have gone into this. And
why don't they just read the Baltimore Brew? Why don't they just hire you to go and look into it for them? Because you're the only paper, you're the only news outlet that covered this story.
No, the Sun has covered the story pretty well in terms of HarborPoint.
My
In
bad,
terms
I
of
don't
the water meter story, they've written some of it. We've dragged them into it, and so I used to work